One is have his physical paper, written paper checked up, and whatever marks he got in his Viva. There is one method which we used to put up before the university, vice chancellors, and see that evaluation is done again. The second was, well, the first method didn't work very well, you can say. The biasness continued. So the second method that we adopted was, during those periods, a small tape recorder had come into the market. So buy one of the tape recorders. Who was going for Viva, ask him to carry it and have the whole thing recorded. So once you know what is recorded, you can confront the panelist, whether you want this in the air or whether you want to go by your own system. For a few years later on, you can say the system stopped and new methodologies started adopting it. Otherwise, during our college days, those who did medical engineering, there are very few who completed their courses within the given period of time. But additional years were consumed. And that is how, I think so, you have some people who have completed in 7 years, 8 years, and therefore you find extension being given by the universities during this. So every generation, I think so, will have to face the whole show. And they'll have to devise their own ways how to fight it. Generalize it in the general sense. But if you develop a methodology, I say of beating it down, for few years it works, but again a new method is found out. So you have to go on improvising yourself in compacting all these things. So there is no hard and fast that this is 1 and 2 which can work, unless the physical examination, as I call it, is taken away and you have something like an objective system where the candidate's identity is hidden. And unless that methodology is developed, I think so, this kind of discrimination is going to continue for years to come. So this is one I would say. Second is basically, as far as the other issue that you have raised is government scholarships for those students going abroad. Year by year, it is coming down. And as long as this government continues, I don't see any change in the policy or additional funds will be allotted through the social welfare department. The kind of analysis that was needed for the implementation of the component plan at the intellectual level, that is missing. In the sense that funds under the component plan, both for the tribal and the SCs, are meant specially for them. But the misuse that is taking place in those funds, to give an example, I can say is that when a road is being built, there are many villages on that roads. In a village, you have the scheduled caste bastis, you have the tribal bastis. Now that road is not an exclusive road for the scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. It's there as general, so it should go normally from the general. But basically what happens is, either the center or both at the states, funds from the central component plan is taken away and placed in the hands of the general budget, whereby the economic development of the scheduled caste and the tribes, which should take place out of these funds, does not take place effectively. Allotted for the scheduled caste or for the tribe. What percentage of the plan should be spent on education, on social development and economical development? If those figures are available, I think it becomes very important at various forums to catch hold of the government and say this is an issue. You see, I've been trying for the last 4 or 5 years in laying my hands on these figures. For a simple reason is that this is a binding economic and social development, educational development is a constitutional right, and therefore in 1982 decision was taken that to implement this, the budget should have, according to the population, the allocation. The allocation is done by the parliament. This is where we need to understand. So once it is allotted, it becomes the responsibility of the department to spend on that only. The executive cannot change the head. But normally, since the activeness which has to be in this field is absence, and you don't have exactly what's happening, it has now become a trend that 60% of the budget of the special component plan is transferred to the general budget. If you take the last 2 years, the COVID fund, which the central and the state government have used, are basically from these 2 years. If you go and question them, they say, no, we will return back. They'll come back. But it never comes back. But there is nobody to question, there is nobody to ask. I'm just only putting across with that system is against us. That is true. But can we put check and balance on the system? Yes, we can put check and balance. Because as I've said that once it is allotted by the parliament, if you have to change the head, you have to go back to parliament. Get the head changed, and then only you can reallocate it. The executive cannot reallocate on its own. And that's a prime issue. It's a difficult task, I do agree. Whether we will succeed in establishing it as a criminal offence, I am doubtful myself. But there's always a threat. Those who are interested with the job of transferring these funds to a non-head, that someday I will get caught. So we will not transfer the whole amount, but we will transfer half of the amount, and the half of the amount which is left, then I think so can be reallotted into the whole scheme that we are asking for. At various level, as I have said, that now it's basically an issue where we cross-check what has been allotted. If there's nothing, has anything left that we need to create new? They would say no. there is enough. Is it complete? I would say it's not complete. But whatever is available now needs to be properly implemented. Even if it's properly implemented, half of the issues on what we are raising today will absolutely be a non-issue in the coming years. But apart from this, there is one issue which is raging very fast. And I think so it's like to begin next year with the medical field. There is an oath which every doctor takes at the present of non-discrimination. And since this has come straight from the blue, the topic has come to me, but I was just told that I should present BAPSA by theorem. I said, okay, maybe I have to go and listen. So I don't have the copy of the new pledge which the doctors will have to do. And the new pledge, if I may say so, has something to do with the inclusion of Manusmriti in his life. If I have, I think so, after returning back, I can mail you the copy of the new pledge which is coming into place. And that, I think so, is most important, where we should worry about. The new introduction that is being brought about, where slowly by slowly, as I say, conditioning of mind to a new system, to a new ideology, to the acceptance of a new ideology and acceptance of a new way of life. Slowly by slowly, that which has been built into the student life, social life, that is the issue which is most concern, I would say. Because once you adopt that, and once you condition yourself, your resistance to the movement diminishes, I would say. And then you would start following it, the system. And therefore, the present regime, I would say, is working towards or developing institutions, systems and institutions in such a way that 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, whatever they want to preach will be accepted as a gospel. So they have started conditioning your mind for that. And once the mind gets conditioned to the whole system, then as I said, the resistance power of an individual or of a movement diminishes, and slowly we fall a prey to it. I think that is one of the biggest threat which the student communities, I would say, are facing. And that should be the major concern of the younger generation. I'm not aware with that the older generation was basically leading the movement would be aware of what is happening at the present stage. For a simple reason, that the present regime is working on the younger generation. They are making the younger generation as the target. Since the younger generation is becoming the target, the older generation, who's away from the university campus, has nothing to do. Or is out of the fold of what is happening. And therefore, unless and until the student movement picks up, discusses this issue, others are not going to have an idea of what is happening. Everybody is saying that I am confused as to what is happening. And the confusion is because he has passed an age where his connection with the ideological world, intellectual world, or the student world has cut off. And therefore, he always says that what is happening I do not know, it's a confusion. And this confusion, I think so, will have to be addressed by the student themselves. Some of us are making the efforts to crystallize it in a slogan form. I will put one issue before you where you can crystallize it in a very better form. Everybody is speaking of now as nationalist and how others are not nationalist. Has anybody thought of an issue as to how to counter this? You have a good example. You don't need to search anything. You have to only scratch your brains. And you have to scratch the history. And you will have a very powerful weapon. Can anybody think of it?
RSS didn't involve in freedom. RSS didn't involve in any freedom.
That everybody knows it. Something new. Something which has not been tried. You have been learning also.
Ambedkar.
So,
Ambedkar Sahib no statement done.
so that, no, I would not say that is an issue now. Yeah, it's a very powerful issue.
History.
You have the Act of 1880. What's its title as? So I'm saying an Act of 1980. What's its title as?
Parlamento.
Say it loud.
Parlamento. Yes. Good.
It's a criminal trial. What were the criminals known earlier? The British used the word criminal, but what is the actual word they are known as? This is the present word.
Present word is denotified.
This is the present word. They were known as Pindaris.
Okay.
And Pindaris is a nation by itself. They were one of the most important factors in the 1857 mutiny. Rest surrender, they didn't surrender.
Yeah.
And she didn't surrender, therefore the British prepared the Criminal Tribe Act. And we speak of the concentration camps. But these Pindaris basically in every state. They were separate camps for it. Where the law says that six in the evening till 6 in the morning, he will be in the camp. Daytime, he is allowed to earn his bread and butter. But in the evening, he has to come back. If he doesn't come back, then there are various punishments that have been prescribed. between those who surrendered and those who did not surrender. Those who surrendered and those who not surrendered, did not surrender, you have a very powerful weapon today. You only need to articulate it. Those who surrendered became the slaves of the Britishers. Those who did not surrender were put in the camps. They got their freedom on the 1st of April, 1952. The camp existed even after 1950. So those who were within the camp, their social, economic, political freedom is 2 years later. What I'm pointing out is you must learn to push people who are claiming as nationalists on the back foot. If whatever I've studied from Dr. Ambedkar's literature and his movement, he forced people on the back foot. So he was always on the forefront. And since he always remained on the forefront, he dictated terms to the society and to the nation. Today we are an intellectual class. We are a learned class. Instead of first saying, I want this, let's put those who are claiming nationalism on a back foot. There was a very interesting piece of an Indian describing himself in the Japanese society. And the Indians is now addressing the rest of the Indians. He said, in the Japanese society, I am never invited. And then one day he inquired as to why I am not being invited. And the simple question that was put to him, yeah, how many Britishers rule you? Being a learner, he said 10,000. And he said, what was your population? And the ratio was mentioned. If you don't have the guts, why should we invite you? The Japanese invites only those who have guts. It's a moral lesson which I understand that conversation has. Let's show the guts. That we as a history never surrendered. So those who surrendered should not teach us. We are going to dictate that. The moment you put who are claiming to be nationalists and trying to dictate their terms, you start rewriting the world. So in every generation, I feel, new idioms have to be developed. Which idioms will keep you always on the forefront. And as long as you remain on the forefront, you might be able to communicate, convey, and also execute what you want. Whether it will be implemented, it depends Again, where you stand. So I think not many changes are taking place. And we are only feeling the threat of those changes. We are only trying to address this threat. But we are not ready to take this threat. But then it begins when there was a group who was ready to survive. Even fight it out. Why did you surrender? I don't think so. There will be an issue, but there will be issue within the Ambedkarites, I know. Then they'll start talking about, oh, had the Britishers not come, then they would not have any changes. There are many things which will start, but I think so we should not worry about these kinds of discussion, because I normally don't worry about these kinds of discussion. For a simple reason is, I know I can tackle him. He's not my target at the present stage. My target at the present stage is put on defense who's trying to come forward. The leadership and the ideological discussion and the debate and the agenda that the Ambedkar sits in this country should remain as it is. And that should be the target. And that, as I've said, can develop only when we think of keeping ourselves ahead of the others. And that I've said that in an era where issues get changed, today nationalist has become a major issue. So you have to speak the theory of surrender and non-surrender. We represent the non-surrenders. So those who surrender should not teach us. Therefore, I said that every generation is a new generation. There will be new issues. There will be counter to each issue also. To keep abreast of these issues, I think so, we have to develop our own idioms which are historically sound and which cannot be questioned. If we can do that, I think so, we are on the forefront, and the threat perception then diminishes that I feel. I've opened up a topic before you for a discussion. I think everybody can sit and discuss on it. Thank you for inviting me.